The Environmental Protection Agency has just announced that they will be putting limits on the amount of chemicals called PFAS that can be in your drinking water. So this is, I would say, that finally. So now PFAS refers to a large group of man-made chemicals that have been used since the 1940s for things like waterproofing, stain-proofing products, clothing, makeup, furniture, even used in firefighting foam and semiconductors. So it's a lot of industrial applications. So now the main manufacturers of the chemical are DuPont and 3M. Those are the big ones. And it's used, like I said, in a lot of things. And so when there's widespread use in industry, that's going to sometimes end up going into the environment and even the domestic drinking water supply. So now that can be problematic because it can have a devastating effect on the human body. According to the EPA Administrator Michael Reagan, long-term exposure to certain types of PFAS have been linked to serious illnesses, cancers, liver damage, high cholesterol, immune and developmental damage to infants and children. So again, a lot of potential issues here. Not good. Having those in our water supply, terrible. And yet, it took this long to get them regulated. I think we know why that is. The answer to why it took so long, because of corporate greed. So now, that said, let me give you the details before I get into that part. All right. Now, water systems will be required to monitor for these chemicals and to remove them if they're found above allowable levels. And again, the allowable levels are very, very minuscule. Public water systems will have 5 years to address their PFAS problems, 3 years to sample their systems and establish existing levels of PFAS, and an additional 2 years to install water treatment technologies if the levels ended up being too high, according to senior government officials talking to reporters. Now, let's get to the details, right, of the ones that are going to be tested and restricted. Only 6 of them. Now, wait, currently there are more than 12,000 known PFAS chemicals. They're only testing for 6? Wait a minute. But hold on. Now, according to a former EPA official, the treatments for those 6 could apply to removing the majority, if not all, the other chemicals as well. This is Elizabeth Sutherland, who says, in addition to other PFAS, they will be taking out all other kinds of pesticides, pharmaceuticals, and personal use products that are unregulated now under the Safe Drinking Water Act, but which we know have serious health effects. All right, so I hope she is correct in that it helps remove not only more PFAS chemicals, but also all the other stuff that she adds, okay, that should not be in our drinking water. So, yeah. Now, this comes with a $1 billion grant to help the water systems and private well owners conduct additional initial testing and treatment, as well as $9 billion, or I should say it's part of the $9 billion funding package for PFAS removal that was passed in the bipartisan infrastructure law. So now, in addition to that, companies that made these chemicals are on the hook for more than $10 billion from a class action lawsuit. That is money that will also go to public water systems to remove PFAS chemicals. Now, that said, okay, so you might have $19 billion to remove the PFAS, right? What happens when they run out of money? Well, it turns out consumers might end up being on the hook. So there's good and bad here, but generally, good thing to get rid of these chemicals, all right? They are harmful, and yes, this is something good from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I don't think that it went far enough. That's my personal opinion. But hey, it's not like there wasn't good things in it. This is great. Getting rid of these chemicals and having this water, the water supply tested. Now, the other question is, though, why not sooner? Why did it take so long? Well, according to newly revealed internal information, Trump administration appointees in the EPA had actually attempted to ensure that companies, even under the Biden administration, would not have to report PFAS. Okay? So now Trump administration officials that were appointed to these positions had actually barred experts, according to an article in The Hill, from warning legislators about major environmental loophole which allowed for companies to avoid disclosing the releases of these chemicals to the EPA. And this was actually in the 2020 NDAA. So, yeah, they wrote in this, this loophole, right, for these reporting requirements for PFAS. And EPA officials are like, hey, wait, hold on. That's a major loophole here for reporting requirements. We should do something about that. And the higher-ups that were Trump political appointees were like, no, you don't. What are you talking about? No, you can't report that. We're not going to allow you to. That's insane. In fact, internal EPA correspondence obtained by The Hill shows that career staff members had attempted to make Congress aware of the issue, but their efforts were rebuffed by Trump political appointees. One employee had lamented that career staff had tried to tell the Senate about the problem, but could not get approval to do so. Now, specifically, they tried to put PFAS on the list of chemicals of special concern. So that's different than other regulated chemicals. So of special concern, obviously, it's like, hey, these are especially harmful, or these need different, more stringent regulations than other standard chemicals, okay? And so these standard chemicals, more of it can be allowed to get into the environment without causing, too much environmental damage or damage to human beings, okay? So special chemicals, though, special consideration, it takes a lot less of them to wreak havoc. And so PFAS, it takes a lot less of these chemicals to wreak havoc. They should have been on this list, but they were prevented from doing so, okay? So now, that is disastrous. Totally disastrous. Now, there are two people specifically named in this report that blocked the EPA officials from reporting this to Congress. One of them, Mark Hartman, a career official. More importantly, though, Nancy Beck. So Nancy Beck happened to be a Trump appointee who served as the deputy and then principal deputy, assistant administrator, of the EPA's Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention. Beck, interestingly enough, prior to taking on the EPA role, worked for 5 years and is an executive at the American Chemistry Council, a chemical industry lobbying group. To show you the level of corruption here, you have this person that was a lobbyist getting put into the EPA to oversee, she was a chemical lobbyist, put in the EPA to oversee chemicals. Of course. Now, the Hill caught up to Beck and asked her, hey, what was this all about? Did you actually block Congress from being able to see this correspondence that was going on in your office? She's like, oh, no. I just didn't have time to review it all when I was working there. But what were you doing? What were you doing in the years that this loophole was in effect? What were you doing? I talk to my boss. So now the boss, Alexandra Dunn. Alexandra Dunn happened to be now the president and CEO of agrochemicals group CropLife America. Oh, now we're more chemicals. Another person in the chemical industry. Huh. Interesting. So look, they ended up closing the loophole in 2023. They proposed it in 2022, then finally finalized the rule, and that will go in effect on July 1st of this year. That's when these companies are now mandated to report any, PFAS exposures, right, into the environment. But yeah, a little too little too late. There was over 2 years with this loophole open, and Congress was not allowed to know that it existed, even though the people at the EPA knew that this existed, because those appointees, they had to wait for these appointees to be gone. Wow. So now, again, that really explains why it took so long for these forever chemicals to be regulated in the first place because you had corporate greed. You had these corporations with their lobbyists being put into these positions of power by Donald Trump and other Trump administration officials. So, look, at least now we've got some regulations that are in place. Again, too little, too late. But hey, at least now we can try to filter them out. But again, should have happened a lot sooner. But the real takeaway from the story is that the only reason we didn't, even though we have known for a long time how harmful these chemicals could be, is because of the corruption and the corporate greed